Hi, I'm Will with Thrive Together Ministry, and this is a marriage ministry, but this is also a ministry about relationship, not just with your spouse, but with other people. Many of the tools that you learn that you're going to use with your spouse, you're also going to use with the people in your life. This could be your family, these could be your coworkers, it could be your boss, definitely your spouse. And everybody else that you come in contact with. The first thing we wanted to go over just a little bit, and we're going to dive much deeper into this, is going to be the topic that of forgiveness. Specifically, and we want to get you all on the same topic, is that of closing loops with individuals. So, closing a loop, what is a loop? Well, this is a visual representation of an issue that you have with another individual. Think of a loop as a circle. And a circle will contain an incident that occurs, going to that individual and talking to them about it, people asking for and receiving forgiveness. And that closes that loop. If one of those parts are missing, that loop stays open, which let's, for example, you don't ask for forgiveness, or the person is still really upset with you and has told you to go away. So that loop is kind of still open. Now, that will be another video about when you try to close a loop and that closing of the loop doesn't happen, how to handle that and how to deal with that. But first, I wanted to say that this is all about how to forgive and how to give a proper apology. That's what really this video is going to be about. So, when you first recognize that you have created an offense or that you have an offense, the first thing you should do is go to the individual, speak to that individual and talk to them, let them know how you feel. It is really important to use I feel statements, such as, when you spoke to me the other day that way, it made me feel like my opinion wasn't important, or something to that effect. Or when you cut me off and stopped letting me talk, that made me feel disrespected. Or when I was talking to you and you walked away to handle the cat, it made me feel like I was unimportant. This is important because we are not being accusatory in how we're addressing the incident. We're simply explaining how we feel. Now, feelings can sometimes misdirect and misguide, but it is important to identify them so that way we understand how we feel and so that the other person understands how we feel. Now, when you go to that person and you tell them how you're feeling, it is important for that person to acknowledge what you're saying and for them to own whatever the Holy Spirit convicts them that is what they feel they have wronged. For example, if I say, when you walked away and I was trying to talk to you, it made me feel disrespected, like what I was saying wasn't important. That individual then would say, what I hear you saying is, I walked away and that made you feel hurt because it made you feel unimportant. Is that correct? It's important to use this verbiage. What I hear you saying is, to make sure that what they're saying and what you're hearing are the same thing. Oftentimes, what we say and what we mean are totally different. In fact, I often tell people, you have to become the interpreter of your spouse. What that means is you're going to oftentimes hear things and repeat back to them what you're hearing, and they're going to say, well, that's not right, or that's sort of right, but this is what I meant by it. So it's important we don't jump to conclusions. Rather, we walk through and work through trying to first get on the same page. If we can't get on the same page about what was being said, then it's impossible for us to get to closing that particular loop, because we can't identify the hurt or the offense to close it through an apology and an acceptance of an apology. So once you get on the same page, You're going to state how you feel. The other person is going to state what they hear you saying. The person that then hears that and understands that will then own what part they feel the Holy Spirit is leading them to apologize for. Now, this could be a real offense or it could be a perceived offense. And you're maybe thinking, well, why would I apologize for a perceived offense? Well, a couple of reasons. The first is we may feel justified in what we've done, but that doesn't mean that the way we handled it was biblically healthy. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is that we're owning our portion of how we handle a conversation. And sometimes it's as simple as we were careless with someone's heart, we were harsh with our words, or maybe we dismissed when someone was trying to speak. Either way, what's going to happen is when you communicate how you feel, the other person should then hear and repeat back what they think they're hearing so we can get on the same page. Once we're on the same page, then we will then be able to decipher and figure out what it is we need to pray about and to come to a point of reconciliation on. So if I say, when you walked away to go pet the cat and I was trying to talk to you about work, it made me feel disrespected, like you didn't care about work, about what was going on in my life. And you say, so what I hear you saying is, you would have preferred me to not be distracted and to give you undivided attention. Is that what I'm hearing? Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Okay. So now that we've identified the issue at hand, because we've been able to come to an agreement and an understanding on the issue, it's now at that point that we can actually close the loop because we've identified what the loop or the incident is. A proper apology, it's very hard for most people to do. I have found even people in ministry struggle very difficult with this. That is, once the item is identified, you're to say, I understand that my walking away made you feel disrespected. For that, I am sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. Will you please forgive me? Now, this may be a perceived issue or it might be a real issue. That is actually a moot point. Because what's the point of an apology? It's not actually to make right what's wrong, it's reconciliation. Reconciliation is actually the goal. And the only way we get to reconciliation is for the other person to feel acknowledged and understood, and for us to own our portion of an interaction that went south. Now, you may be wondering, what portion do I own? Well, for most interactions, almost all, not always, but the general rule of thumb is everybody owns something. It may be that in that interaction, when I was talking, maybe my spouse, maybe Connie was in the middle of petting the cat. And she was in the middle of combing it. And our cat needs combed, it needs taken care of. And she's working really difficult, to get this cat shaved and taken care of. And I'm not even helping. In fact, I come to her and I interrupt what she's trying to concentrate on. And I start to tell her all these things about work. Now, she walks off because the cat runs away. She's frustrated. She runs after the cat. I feel disrespected because it feels like she wasn't listening. No, she wasn't listening. And there's at some point something there that she might want to own. But was the actions that I took in that scenario righteous? Was it the correct way of handling it? Or maybe, just maybe, could I have come to her and said, hey, I'd like to talk about work. Is this a good time? And we could have given her an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm kind of busy. I actually would love your help right now. I'm working with the cat. Or I don't have the mental fortitude to handle both situations. Can we talk in 5 minutes? Something to that effect. So in that situation, I could then own the portion that the Holy Spirit's revealed to me and say, you know what, honey, I noticed you were with the cat. You were busy. And that was a difficult situation for you. And on top of me not helping, I actually started talking about something that was stressful in my life. For that, I am sorry. If that's what we've identified as an issue. For her, she could say, I definitely can see how when I ran off to get the cat, that was could have been, or you felt was, a dismission of how you felt in that moment, because it probably felt like I didn't care. That's what I'm hearing you say, is it felt like you didn't care. It was disrespectful. And so in that, we can come to reconciliation. Reconciliation is actually the goal here. It's not really to figure out who is wrong and who is right, because at the end of the day, we're both humans trying to create reconciliation. So once we can close that loop, we can throw that item away, and we know now how to better communicate, and we can get through a situation. What happens oftentimes in a lot of relationships is there are incidences that are not addressed. We're going to call these loops, or incidences that are not addressed. And what happens is an incident occurs around dinner time, and we just want to eat and we want peace. So we don't say anything. Then another incident near bedtime. We don't say anything because we want peace. And these may be small, kind of innocuous situations. Well, then another one happens and another one happens. And now we're just kind of grumpy with each other and we don't know why. And this is when you have a metaphorical bucket, and the bucket is filling with a bunch of these open loops, these circles. And so it becomes a huge issue. Excuse me. And so then it becomes very difficult to identify what is the issue at hand and how do we even identify them and close them. So it is my encouragement today for you to take the time to sit down with your spouse, to chat, and to challenge each other. This is actually the challenge, to ask your spouse, can you think of an open loop, an incident where you felt like I was being unloving or disrespectful that you would like to talk about? And actually go there with them, allow them to identify the incident that they're thinking of, listening with an empathetic ear with the intent to understand and not defend. And make sure you use I feel statements. When we were here or we were doing that, I felt this way. Because when we don't put people on the defense and we give them information and a window into how we're feeling, it's going to make it easier for them to not put up a wall, stonewall you, become argumentative, or anything. Avoid using always and never. Those are absolute statements that are pretty much false. You always do this, you never do that. Those are not only accusatory and lies, because it's not the case that someone always does something or never does something. They maybe do it often, but it's not the case that they are perpetually that way. So you've got to be really careful from using absolute statements. They're accusatory. They also start fights, and they're not how you feel. They're about what's wrong with the other person. I'd love for you guys to try this, close a loop or two, see how much better your relationship is and feels. And I really want to dig deeper into this conversation a little bit later with my wife, while we do more of kind of a podcast style where we make a discussion Q&A type thing. It'll be very fun, but thank you anyway for coming and checking this out. If this information about closing loops is helpful to you, put a like on the video, but also leave a comment down below as to why you felt that this particular information would be helpful. Thank you, and as always, have a wonderful day.